when you're talking about Medicare, especially with certain types of the products, you just don't see that same volume of issues as you would with traditional small group or group plans or even under 65 individual plans.
I'm Matt Fazell from Madison, Wisconsin, and you're listening to You're a Financial Planner, Now What? The podcast to help you fast track your career by bringing you meaningful conversations on topics that influence new financial planners, their careers, and the lives of their clients.
Today's guest is Barry Streit, Senior Vice President at United Healthcare. Barry focuses on the practical information that financial planners need today in order to serve clients who are approaching or are in retirement. If you don't work with older clients just yet, don't worry, there's lots of good information that will help you and your clients plan for the future. Up next, Barry and Hannah Moore cover what you need to know about Medicare and how you can apply this information with clients and prospects to help accelerate your career and become a better financial planner. But first, are your clients asking questions about Medicare? Making smart Medicare choices can help your clients manage their healthcare costs in retirement, but navigating all their Medicare options can be complicated. United Healthcare is proud to team up with FPA to provide you with information to help your clients make smart Medicare choices. To learn more about United Healthcare and get your Medicare questions answered, call 855-857-9751 or email fpainfo@uhc.com.
Well, thank you for joining me today, Barry.
My pleasure.
I am really excited about this episode. You know, usually we talk a lot about career paths, and we will be still talking about that, but we're kind of going like OG style here of talking about really what is it that makes us great planners and what are those things that we need to know as financial planners. And one of the things that I will tell you, even in my practice, that has really helped is knowing information about Medicare. Now, if you're a young planner, you're listening to this and you're like, wait a minute, I don't have older clients. You still want to listen to this because this is information that you need. And just by having these data points, it will help you as you're working with clients. So before we get into some of the Medicare, Barry, can you tell me a little bit more about yourself and your background and kind of how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, you bet. It's great to be here. Appreciate the time and attention to this, to Medicare. It's really exciting. I know it doesn't sound exciting, but it really is. So I've been at United Healthcare for almost 13 years now. It'll be 13 years in March. Prior to coming here to UHC in the Medicare business, I was in the financial services business. I was at Schwab for about 10 years, mostly in San Francisco, but I also ran a branch in Santa Barbara, and I had a Silicon Valley region when I was there as well. I was at TD Ameritrade and also I ran a broker dealer for a big bank in Chicago, BMO Harris Bank. And so I'm familiar with the challenges and the opportunities with financial advisors, worked with quite a few of them in my Schwab days. So I have an understanding of the challenges of being an independent financial advisor today with all of the other competitive pressures and fee pressures and that sort of thing. And one of the things that we thought about was the health wealth connection and connecting Medicare and post-retiree healthcare with the needs of financial advisors. And so that's how the background and then my current role kind of meshed together. And that's why we're having this conversation.
So many times in the past, when people think of financial advisors, they think of investments. Adding in things like Medicare really kind of expand that into, what do we do as financial planners? It's how we help our clients holistically. And this is just one part of it.
The industry has evolved so much since I first started on that side of the business. And back then, most of the advisors I worked with were asset managers, and it was asset allocation and diversification and rebalancing. And it was mostly that kind of activity. And over time, of course, more and more demands were coming into financial advisors, and constantly being able to add value and being able to differentiate your practice from others doing the same thing has just been this ongoing challenge in that industry. Always has been, and it'll continue to keep evolving into the future.
So we've talked a little bit about this, but why should financial planners care, or why should we be thinking about Medicare?
So I think the biggest reason, and there's a couple of them, but the biggest reason is the consumer is changing who they are turning to for this sort of information. So I'll just go back a little bit of a history lesson. 2011 is when the first baby boomer turned 65. And we all know about the baby boomer and their control over the vast majority of the wealth that's in investable wealth today. And they started turning 65 2011, and then by 2015 or so, the majority of Medicare-aged individuals were baby boomers. And for everybody on this podcast who's worked with baby boomers, and I'm a baby boomer myself, we don't do things the same way our parents did. Baby boomers are much more likely to want to do research. They want to do things on their own, at least to learn on their own. But when they turn to someone who has advice or expertise, they are not necessarily turning to the traditional Medicare agent that's been in the business for many, many years. They are starting to turn now towards their financial advisors or their CPAs or anybody else who they have a relationship with, who they trust, and they're asking those folks. And so part of why we're having this conversation is we know that financial advisors are getting Medicare questions way more than they ever did in the past. And they have to have some sort of answer. You just don't want to say, no, I don't do that to a client. That's just not obviously the best experience that most of us want to put out there for our clients.
In my work with clients, anybody over the age of like 50, 55, like they all have Medicare questions and they all have opinions and thoughts about it. And it's just been really interesting, just in my personal experience with this as well.
Yeah, it is definitely a big thing. So many years ago, I don't know, maybe 12 years ago, 11 years ago, I went to the LPL conference in San Diego and did a breakout session. We had a booth, talked to advisors, and a lot of the questions people were like, well, why are you here? Like, why is an insurance company, a Medicare health insurance company, at an LPL conference? And when we did our breakout session, I would ask the question, who here has gotten Medicare questions? Didn't get a whole lot of hands raised. But by the third year of the conference, the entire room, 3/4 of the room would be raising their hands about getting Medicare questions. And the folks who were stopping by our booth were asking, hey, how do I learn more? Who can I talk to in my local community who can help my clients with Medicare questions? And so you clearly started to see this uptake in interest because their clients were asking them the questions. And so it's been interesting to see that evolve. And it's all connected to the boomers aging into the space.
So I've seen a lot of financial advisors be kind of hesitant to talk about health insurance. How is Medicare different from kind of the traditional like health insurance plan of like really diving into the details of that?
I guess one of them is that there's just huge amounts of change that have been going on in the business since the Affordable Care Act and lots of changes in Medicare rules and all of that. And so it is complicated, it's confusing, and in general, it's not a huge part of most planners and advisors. It's not a huge part of what they do every day. And all of us, we get focused on the stuff that we do that drives most of the revenue, that drives most of the success of our practices. And anytime you're asked to look at new things, it's just really difficult. I mean, I remember when we first started talking to advisors about life insurance and annuities, it just wasn't something that they really wanted to do. They really wanted to focus on the asset allocation and all of that. But now it's pretty standard. Same with mortgages and other things that advisors work with their clients on. But it's still it's a big opportunity, and I think it's just critical that we have a working understanding of how this works. Going back to the question about Medicare, what's different about Medicare versus other health insurance is that depending on the products you're looking at, there's a guaranteed issue, right? You're not doing underwriting and having to follow up and get more details about this person's hospital stay or medications, that sort of thing. If you're talking about Medicare Advantage, it's all guaranteed issue. If you're talking about MedSup, within a certain number of months of becoming eligible, it's guaranteed issue. There's also far fewer questions when it comes to claims and that kind of service that I think most advisors really don't want to have to deal with claims questions or things like that. But again, when you're talking about Medicare, especially with certain types of the products, you just don't see that same volume of issues as you would with traditional small group or group plans or even under 65 individual plans.
And I mean, the other big thing that I'm seeing with my clients is that it's just so much cheaper than like on the market healthcare plans. And so I know a lot of my clients are just like anxious to get to age 65 so that they can finally get on Medicare.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's become a planning consideration. I mean, we build in our plans health insurance costs, and then once Medicare comes, we drop that down. So even just understanding how it works is a huge planning issue that I found with retired clients. or retiring clients?
Absolutely. And I think understanding the benefits and the limitations of all the different, whether it's original Medicare or if you're adding a supplement or you're adding a drug plan, whatever, all these different the options that you have when you're building out a post-retiree healthcare plan, just understanding what is covered, what's not covered, and what the liability is for the client if they don't have certain coverages. What is the potential costs or downside if they don't have those coverages? And that is a much bigger deal now because medical care is way more expensive now. Drugs are way more expensive now than they were many, many years ago when Medicare first came on the horizon. And so it's a much bigger question now.
So you've mentioned both these terms, a Medicare supplement versus a Medicare Advantage. Kind of what's the difference between the two, and how would you describe that to a client?
It is, first I will acknowledge for your listeners, it's not simple. And it's not simple because the concepts are difficult. It is complicated because of how the government chose to design and name a lot of the plans. It just wasn't put together by a marketing team or a corporate team. So you've got original Medicare, which are called Part A and B, and then there's Part C, which is also Medicare Advantage, and then there's Part D, which is drugs. But then if you're looking at Medicare supplements, they've got letters as well. And the letters aren't in any sort of order of comprehensiveness, if that's even a real word. And so it's confusing with all these letters and terms. With that said, let's try to simplify it. So from a Medicare supplement standpoint, it is in exchange for a monthly premium, you can have all or most of whatever Medicare doesn't cover paid for by the plan. So traditional Medicare will pay 80% of the covered procedures or whatever for medical care. 80% is what Medicare pays, and then that 20% is up to the consumer. Now, way back when, 20% of a doctor's visit, 20% of a hospital stay, that sort of thing, wasn't that big of a deal. Nowadays, that 20% can be a really, really big number. And so Medicare supplement, you can have the plan cover all of that 20% or some of that 20%. And it just depends. If you have it covering less of the 20%, the premium's lower. If you wanted to cover all of the 20%, then the premium's higher. So conceptually, Medicare supplement is really easy to understand. It just pays some or all of what Medicare doesn't pay. Does that make sense?
Yep. No, that makes, I'm taking notes here. I'm selfishly, I have a client situation. I need to explain the Medicare to the son. So I'm taking notes for myself. So that's Medicare supplement. So now what is Medicare Advantage?
Well, I'm going to continue real quick on the Medicare supplement in that Medicare, the original Medicare, does not cover drugs. That's drugs that you self-administer at home, right? You go to Walgreens, pick up your medications, you take it at home. That's not covered under original Medicare. And so Medicare created what's called Part D, which is drugs. That one's kind of easy to remember. And it covers, it's a partnership between the government and private companies. And the idea is that you find a formulary that has the medications on it that you take, and it covers the pharmacies that you like to go to. And that has a premium every month as well, plus usually some sort of copay for whatever the medications are. And the copays could be really small, even zero, in depending on where you live, for certain generics. And then as you move up in the cost of drugs, that dollar amount or the copay or the coinsurance can start to get pretty high at the higher level, more expensive medications. And so MedSup plus a Part D drug plan should cover much of what Medicare Original A and B doesn't cover. I know that's a lot. So now go to Medicare Advantage. Medicare Advantage, which is also known as Part C, and it doesn't stand for anything, it just is, bundles those things together. So again, it is these plans are issued from private insurance companies like mine, United Healthcare, but also Humana, Aetna. There's a lot of big companies out there that issue Medicare Advantage plans, and there's a whole lot of rules around what has to be covered and things like that that are issued by CMS, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. That's the regulator around Medicare. But essentially what a Medicare Advantage plan does is bundles those things together. It bundles the hospital, doctor, drugs, and other benefits such as gym memberships, hearing aids, eyeglasses, dental, things like that. And those plans can vary. In fact, they do vary quite a bit by location, by market where a client lives. And so when I think about the two plans, and if I'm making a recommendation, I'll give you a perfect example. My dad was a perfect med sup buyer. He didn't want to mess with networks. He wanted to go where he wanted, when he wanted, didn't want anybody telling him what to do. He was the perfect med sup buyer. Plus, he could afford the premiums. The Med Advantage buyer traditionally was lower income. They often had networks, in fact, still networks that they are tied to, and maybe some other rules that were set up on managed care. So if you wanted to go to a specialist, you have to go to your primary care physician first, and then that physician would need to refer you to a dermatologist and then or a specialist, and all of these folks would have to be in network in the plan. Back in the quote unquote old days, that could be a hassle because there weren't as many physicians, providers, facilities in the networks as there are today. Today, in many markets, a very, very large percentage of the physicians and facilities in that particular market are in the MA plans. And so sometimes that being tied to a network is not as big of a deal as it might have been in the past. So was that helpful in trying to describe the two?
Yeah, no, that was helpful. And I think what's also, it's, you have this fork in the road where you have to decide kind of which side that you're going to go on, if you're going to do the supplemental plans or the Advantage. And so I'm curious, with the Medicare Advantage, can you I know I have several clients who want to move. Does that translate across state borders, or kind of how does that work?
Well, for Medicare Advantage, it can be as much as moving from one county to another. So let's take Southern California as an example. If you were to move from just a mile from LA County to Orange County, you would have to get a new Medicare Advantage plan because the plans are county specific, and not always, but in Southern California they are oftentimes county specific, and it sort of makes sense because they're tied to a network of providers, and providers are very local specific, right? If you live in West LA, you're probably not going to see a doctor in Southern Orange County. It's just a massive drive if you tried to do that. So it makes sense that it's tied to local zip codes and counties and things like that. But it is something to think about, that even a relatively small move could result in that you would need to get a new plan.
And again, that's just a great something to know from a planning perspective of when you guys are talking, when people are talking to their clients about this. So do financial planners need to have a license for Medicare? Kind of what is the regulatory requirements around this?
Medicare as a government program doesn't require any license to talk about, obviously. Financial advisors are certainly free to talk about Medicare as a program and the rules around Medicare and eligibility and all those things that are found online and through either the IRS or through CMS or Medicare.gov, which is the official website. That doesn't require any sort of a license. Generally, the line between when a practitioner needs to be licensed, contracted, and certified is if you are making any specific recommendations on a plan, or if you are talking about specific plan benefits. So if I'm a practitioner and I am saying, well, I think you should have the UHC plan 2, because they have a great rider that provides food if you're in the hospital, when you get out, whatever, things like that. If you're talking about a specific plan and specific benefits, that's pretty clear. You're going to need to have a license and all that. But talking in general or gathering information with permission to refer to a Medicare expert, someone who's licensed and certified, just gathering that information, asking those questions, that would generally not require any sort of license or certification.
What do advisors need to know who maybe have a client base that's younger, that's not ready for Medicare? Like, why is this conversation important for them?
Well, especially for the younger planners that I've worked with, there's a lot of opportunity in the parents or even family members of their clients. So if you have clients that are in their, say, 30s or 40s, when mom or dad or aunt or uncle have Medicare questions, they're oftentimes coming to that 40-year-old client and saying, hey, can you help me understand what this stuff is? Can you go online and help me pick a plan? Right? They're being asked that anyway. And so what I've seen a lot of the younger planners do is send out communications to their clients to say, hey, it's coming up to Medicare time. Many of you get questions from your parents or other family members. We at ABC Planning are happy to provide Medicare consultation services to your parents at no cost, right? Something like that, where you're just, again, adding value to the relationship, that instead of the son or daughter having to figure out the Medicare options, you can offer to help their parents or family members through your own practice. And that's just a great way to add value and perhaps even pick up more clients when you talk to the parents.
Even if it's not a referral, it's, I'm worried about my parents' health. What does this look like? And to be able to just talk through what that looks like for the clients, just in that conversation, can be hugely valuable.
And it is stressful for younger clients who get asked the questions for their parents, because they don't know and they don't want to make a bad decision and maybe put their parents in the wrong plan or something. So to have that opportunity to help them with someone who they know and who they're comfortable with, I think is a huge value add, versus mom and dad going out to a meeting at a Denny's, or, who knows who they might end up talking to and where they might get steered. And ultimately it's going to impact the relationship one way or the other. So I always thought that was a really good idea.
Thinking about like a timeline, like help me understand some of the important dates, or like when do we start having these conversations with our clients, all the way down to when are the dates of the year that are important for Medicare?
So the dates of the year that are important, they're actually coming up. October 1 is when marketing for Medicare Annual Enrollment Period, AEP, as they call it, that starts October 1st. So that was a little bit ago. That's just marketing. And so people can't sign up yet until October 15th. Why? Just because. It's just another one of these things that doesn't quite make sense. So you can get marketing and be asked to call a number or to come meet with somebody, but you can't actually buy anything until the 15th. So starting October 1, when folks who are Medicare eligible, they're going to get tons of marketing in the mail, email, just constant TV ads. And those folks will oftentimes then turn to their financial advisor and say, hey, I just got like 4,000 things in the mail about Medicare. What am I supposed to do? Like, what should I be doing? And so usually October, November, December is when advisors start to get asked a lot of questions about Medicare. And again, October 15th is when folks can start to enroll, and they have until December 7th to make whatever decisions that they want to make.
So December 7th is the cutoff time for this.
Correct. So in general, during AEP, that is the cutoff time.
Oh, so every year people have the option to change a Medicare supplement plan if they want to, but there's a health questionnaire and they get to do their drugs. They can redo their drug plan every year. Is that right?
Well, so AEP is focused primarily on Medicare Advantage and then the Part D drug plans. That's what you can switch around. When it comes to Medicare supplement, that's a little bit different. And you're right. If you're out of your guaranteed issue period, which is generally 6 months from the time that you are eligible for Medicare, you can switch, but it's underwriting dependent. And so if you're still in great health and you want to switch to another company, you can do that. But it is subject to underwriting requirements. But AEP, primarily Medicare Advantage and Part D drug plans.
Let's talk about some of the other issues kind of that are facing Medicare, that are present with Medicare. Okay, tell me more about IRMAA.
IRMAA is a adjustment to the Part B and Part D premiums that a consumer would pay, a client would pay based on their modified adjusted gross income level. So if this is important when you're doing income planning and you're pulling money out of qualified or unqualified plans, that there's a number of thresholds that if you go over that threshold, you're going to increase the cost of Part B and Part D Medicare. And so, again, the income that you have to pull out is the income you have to pull out. But if you can avoid, even if you go over by $1, it's going to put your clients into the next level with that additional amount that IRMAA is going to require. And so it's just a matter of being aware of that, making sure that you understand what is hitting the modified adjusted gross income line and trying to stay below that level if you can. It's just one of those things that you just don't want to be surprised about it when your client's Part B premium goes up from, say, $400 and something to a lot more than that. It's just something you want to try to avoid if you can.
And it is something that once you cross that threshold, like everybody knows, like it's clients feel it on a month-to-month basis. Like maybe that's the best way of saying it.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you're having kind of some of these Medicare conversations, thinking of our role as a financial planner, because we have knowledge about health insurance and all of this, but walk me through kind of what some of these conversations could really look like for a planner and a client talking about Medicare.
Yeah, and so I'll focus on the advisor who doesn't sell products. They don't sell any particular products. They charge it. They're fee-based because that's most of the folks that we tend to have been working with through the FPA. The way that we've seen it work really well is, number one, is you're communicating to your clients that you can offer that service, and reminding them throughout the year, especially as you get towards the end of the year, as you get towards Q4, when it's the Medicare season, reminding the clients that your office can help them with their Medicare questions. We also recommend going into your book of business to find out who is turning 65 during a calendar year. So let's say you're thinking about 2022 and you're thinking about your practice and all your goals and things like that. Understanding who is turning 65 during 2022, right, by month. And then you want to start reaching out to those folks. Generally, most marketing organizations will start sending information 90 days prior to a person turning 65. And so it's great for you to be ahead of that so that they don't inadvertently call somebody else for their Medicare questions, that you've already notified them that, oh, our office can help you with that. And so number one is looking who's turning 65 during the year and when, and then reaching out to them. And then number two is who's already 65 and above, because that's a different strategy that will play out during AEP. And again, depending on the size of your book and how many clients fall into those, it could be one-on-one conversations, it could be group conversations. It just depends on the numbers of folks that we're talking about, and also how your practice is set up in general and what the expectations of your clients are. But those would be the two big ones. Medicare is also available to individuals who are totally disabled as determined by Social Security. 24 months after disability, they are eligible for Medicare. And so for those of you that practitioners who do various trusts or other things with disabled parents or children or spouses or things like that, Medicare plays a role in that as well.
So, what are some common pitfalls that are facing just Medicare consumers today? Like, what do planners need to be aware of? Like, what are the, I don't want to say dangers, but maybe pitfalls? What are the pitfalls that our clients are facing?
So I think a lot of folks, especially if you are you're Medicare age, but you're pretty healthy, you're not taking any medications, and so you just skip the whole Part D drug part. Maybe you buy a MedSup, or maybe you just go with original Medicare. The problem is if you don't buy a Part D plan within the allotted time limit, whether you need it or not, you will be assessed a penalty for the rest of your life when you finally do buy a Part D plan. You're going to end up paying more for that for the rest of your life. And if I am correct, is 1% per month that you waited that gets added to this calculated premium that CMS puts together. And so that's going to be another one of those things where you just want to make sure, if you're a practitioner, you just want to make sure that your client, if they're going on Medicare, that they understand that, look, even if you don't take a bunch of drugs or you don't take expensive drugs, you still need a drug plan. You can buy the cheapest one you want, but you still need it, or else you're going to get a penalty for the rest of your life. That would be one of the pitfalls I would think about. And we see that fairly frequently. Some other ones, if a consumer, a client is not talking to somebody that knows what they're doing, we've seen folks who say, okay, well, I like Medicare Advantage, but I also like my Part D drug plan. So I'm just going to buy what's called a Medicare Advantage only plan, which does not include drugs, except for the fact that you cannot have a Medicare Advantage plan and a Part D plan. These Medicare only plans are specially designed for folks that have TRICARE or other sort of military benefits, and it coordinates only with those types of plans. And that's something, if somebody just goes online, they may not realize that they can enroll in something that's just not right for them. And we've seen other things. Somebody moves from a MedSup to an MA plan, and then they never notify the MedSup plan that they did that. So now they're paying premiums, and they also have the MA plan, and that causes challenges. So there's just a lot of little things that can trip somebody up, and you just don't want to get tripped up and then end up having some sort of major expense, and then sometimes it's too late to try to fix it.
So if somebody's listening to this and is like, okay, I need to get more knowledgeable about Medicare, where can they go to really learn more? What are the resources available?
So depending on how deep they want to get and how much information they want to get, a great starting point is Medicare.gov, and just understanding what is offered on that site. It's unbiased. It's coming directly from the government, and so you can get a lot of good information on that. We've created for FPA members, we've created a website where there are information on client-facing materials and advisor-facing materials. They are branded United Healthcare, and some folks don't have a problem with that. Other folks would rather something that isn't branded. Understand that. So between Medicare.gov or coming to our landing page, there's good information out there. Also, United Health Group puts out Medicare Made Clear, which is available on YouTube, and there's other sites where you can find this information. Again, it's not product specific, other than the fact that UHC is branded on there. It's not pushing any particular products or anything like that.
Well, thank you so much, Barry. Is there anything else that you would want the listeners to know about Medicare or even being in the financial services space?
Well, I think the only thing I would say is it's just so critical to keep evolving the practice and to always add value. The robo-advisors and the changes in fee structure, and that's just not going to go away. And the most successful advisors that I've talked to are constantly evolving their practice and constantly adding the products that make sense for their consumers. And that's what this is all about. I want to see independent financial advisors really successful. And I think this is one of the ways that they can do it to continue to differentiate themselves from other competitors that are out there.
Thank you so much, Barry, for being with us today.
Thank you, Hannah. It was a pleasure.
Are your clients asking questions about Medicare? Making smart Medicare choices can help your clients manage their healthcare costs in retirement. But navigating all their Medicare options can be complicated. United Healthcare is proud to team up with FPA to provide you with information to help your clients make smart Medicare choices. To learn more about United Healthcare and get your Medicare questions answered, call 855-857-9751 or email fpainfo@uhc.com.
Love what you hear on this podcast? Join us in the FPA Activate Facebook community, where you'll find a community of other passionate planners like you. Not only that, but there are live How We Do What We Do sessions focused on what real financial planning looks like in practice. Be sure to join us there to lend your voice, become a better planner, and help grow the financial planning profession.